Okay, this is a look from the Graces Gap overlook at Red Mountain Park, and that is looking north to the city of Birmingham. Right down below is Graces Gap, where the rail line is. Originally, that was the South and North Alabama Railroad that was built going into the little town, little village of Eaton in Jefferson County, which later became the city of Birmingham. And straight across that way was what used to be called the Thomas Mines. They dated back to about 1868, and they were acquired by a Pioneer Mining and Manufacturing Company, which later in the 1890s was bought out by Republic Iron and Steel Company, I believe 1898, and later became the name of the Spaulding Mine. Might not be able to tell, but there's two big round concrete cisterns down there, and that was for the ore concentration plant. So the Spaulding Mine stayed in operation for quite a number of years, and that area right there, back in the 1840s and 1850s, was some of the first ore to be extracted along the mountain by a local farmer named Bayless Grace. And he didn't know if the content of the ore would be good to make iron, so he shipped a wagon load down to the Bibb County Furnace to the southwest. Found out that the ore was pretty good quality to make iron, so he would sell some iron because his property was backed up to the north and to the side of the mountain right there. So he did that for a number of years and quit doing it. But the Indians used to use the red ore as dye for their clothes when they occupied this valley. So Grace's Gap is named after the farmer, Bayless Grace. Actually ended up selling that property in 1868 to the Pioneer Mining and Manufacturing Company. Where all that kudzu is right there, it's cut back above the cisterns. That was the site of the Thomas Mines. It was a series of 6 drift mines. And in 1898, Republic Iron and Steel Company came in from up north, bought Pioneer Mining and Manufacturing Company. And by this time, the name had been changed to the Spaulding Mine. Now, over here, right down in here, in that cut, that was where the original Spaulding Mine was, going back to the 1880s. It was a slope mine. They couldn't really develop the slope too deep because there's a fault about 400 feet underground. The fault, there's a joint slip with the iron ore, and it drops down about a good 150 feet. So they weren't able to dig any further. Plus, they didn't have a lot of room to work with up here. So anyway, the mine's name was changed over there, but there used to be a loading tipple down here, and that's where the entrance to the slope was. You had a tunnel, but anyway, they used to have a long tipple that came out from there. Mine was closed. It was worked all the way through World War I, then closed, reopened, closed. Then in the late 1920s, Republic Iron and Steel Company decided to reopen the Spaulding Mine. They rehabilitated it, put all new equipment in, new hoist house. I mean, just tons of money. Reopened it, and it pretty much stayed in operation into the late 1950s, early 1960s. But that whole side of the mountain, that was all the Spaulding Mine. So, and the slope went a pretty fair piece. The slope went underground. So they actually had 3 different slopes they were working, but they had a main one, and then 2 or 3 more running along the top of the mountain going down. But the rail line going through the gap, of course, has the South and North Alabama Railroad, and then, that had been acquired back in the early 1870s by the Louisville and Nashville Railroad. So that was their main north-south line. So today it's CSX. It's an active rail line going through Grace's Gap. So anyway, we've got the Spaulding mine right there. It's kind of hard to see with all the dense overgrowth, but that's a cut right there. Okay, and that's where they were cutting for the ore, which went on a downgrade. Average anywhere from 9 to 20 to 25 degree down angle, depending on what section of the mountain you're on. So the mine entrance would have been right down here. Like I said, they had a tunnel that actually went through over here and came out and was sent down an incline down to a loading temple. But that's where the Spalding mine was, right in that section. Of course, it's completely sealed up, collapsed, because this is where Alabama Power has their main transmission lines running over the mountain. So that was sealed up decades ago, probably. But anyway, Spaulding mine covered this whole section right here. Back, I'll be walking back this way. That's where some of the early Eureka mines were, and that's where some of the first mining was done to send ore down to the Oxmoor Furnace, which was built by the Red Mountain Iron and Coal Company. 1862-63, it was contracted by the Confederate government during the Civil War. So ore that was extracted, it was open cut open ore from the top of the mountain. It was sent by wagon carts, ox carts, 2.5 miles down to the Oxmoor Furnace. So be walking back this way, staying along the top of the trail. Okay, you can't really see too much because, once again, this is not really the proper time of the year to film something about mines or history because of the overgrowth. But this right here is a big open ore cut right here. And this area right here dates back, some of it dates back to during the Civil War period when they were extracting ore from the top of the mountain, because that was the cheapest, most economical form, because the ore seam starts at the top and goes down. Actually, the mountain, Red Mountain, would go up another 75 feet all the way up over to here. And this is how much ore, about 15 to 20 feet in thickness, they took off the top of the mountain right here. So this is the remains of the open ore cut. And once they had extracted all the ore from the top of the mountain, that's when they went into drift mines, going horizontal in these deep ravines, going after the ore underground. And then they went to slope mining. Slope mining was the most complicated because you had to have extensive machinery, cable hoists, steam engines, the works, to operate a slope mine. But this right here is your open ore cuts. And like I said, this goes back to the Civil War era. And this ore was taken by ox cart all the way down to 2.5 miles to the Oxmoor Furnace, which was run by the Red Mountain Iron and Coal Company. And that the furnace was destroyed in March of 1865, I believe. Union cavalry, led by General Wilson, had done a raid coming down through north central Alabama in the closing weeks of the war to destroy any mills, any furnaces, coal mines, any ore mines, and just to destroy everything. Anything that was tied with the Confederate war effort, they destroyed. And they moved all the way down to Helena, destroyed the Central Iron Works, the coal mines down there, before turning to the east and heading to the Georgia state line. And some weeks later, the Civil War ended. So, but anyway, the open ore cut will extend pretty much the length of the whole mountain inside the park. but it just tells you, though, how much of the mountain they took off the top over many years. Okay, is basically following the Civil War, the Red Mine Iron and Coal Company was restarted, refinanced, some of it with capital investment from up north. The Oxmoor Furnace was eventually rebuilt by the Red Mountain Iron and Coal Company, and they started coming back up here to, go ahead and do the open cut mining along the top of the mountain. And by 1920, this whole area had been abandoned because slope mining was the only way to go after the ores. You went deeper under the ground. So this whole section of the mountain was basically abandoned. But they came up here to, still get some ore, I guess, from time to time, but also had a lot of people coming up here, hiking around. People from the city would come up here during the weekends because you're on top of the mountain, a little bit cooler. But one of the things of interest is this right here is remains of the open cut mining right here. And people back over 100 years ago would come up here and carve their initials into sections, exposed sections of the ore. So right there, there's a lot of initials carved in here. I think that one's 1912 right here. And right there. And there's some more. Wish the sun was out a little bit more, but you've got more carved sections right here. This is probably the most discernible right here. EA, EM, and you see there's just a lot of initials carved in here by people, but you can see that December 21st, 1922. December 21st, 1922. By, looks like EA. Somebody really worked on that one over 100 years ago, EM. Anyway, it's just little bits and pieces of history as you walk along the trail. And there's quite a few more that are carved in right here in this cut. So anyway, just a nice little piece of history there. All right, we'll continue walking down this way. Okay, we're just moving to the southwest along the top of the mountain, the trail. And like I said, you got such thick foliage here. Even in the wintertime, it's thick. But as this goes down, it drops off into a very steep ravine, okay? And right either side of the ravine, they had drift mines. And in 1872, I believe, the Red Mine Iron and Coal Company was reformed as the Eureka Mining and Transportation Company. So they started to develop a 2.5 mile long short line industrial railroad. It was narrow gauge, and the rail line would run from the various mines the Eureka Mining and Transportation Company was operating on the south side of the mountain. They would all join up into one line and run 2.5 miles down to the Oxmoor Furnace. So the Oxmoor Furnace started to have their own dedicated rail system. So it was much more economical than 2.5 miles of, hauling the ore by ox carts down to the furnace. but some of the first drift mining took place down in the ravines like this. And you know, all the drift mines collapsed, who knows when, decades ago, 80, 90 years ago. But you can still see the remains. There's remains of actual rail sections of rail, and actually pretty good shape. Like I said, some of the drift mines drove through to where the Spaulding mine was. They would just drive straight through the flanks of the fingers, if you want to say, horizontally going out to the ore seam. So they were on both sides. So this is just one of the deep ravines down there. And we're going to continue on to the next ravine to the southwest. That's one of the original Eureka mines we'll go to take a look down. Okay, this is a pretty good example of the open cut mining and how much the top of the mountain is probably about a good 100 feet up, right, to the tip. And this is how much they took out. That's the remains of the ore seam going at a down angle, okay? And it just disappears underground. But all of this right here used to look like that. And they took this entire section off. So it tells you how much ore that was being extracted. So that's another look down into that steep ravine. Like I said, it's pretty treacherous. Did that a couple of times in summertime, won't do it again. You've got copperheads, rattlesnakes. You have just got also just steroid ticks. I mean, just huge ticks. I don't care what kind of repellent spray you put on, they're coming for you. So, but anyway, we're going to walk around the trail here and to one of the other big ravines and take a look down. Okay, moved a little bit further southwest along the trail. And this is probably one of the deepest ravines along the mountain. Right here, we're just going to move around up to the top of it. And going all the way down here. This is the site of the original Eureka number 1 ore mine site that was operated by Red Mountain Iron and Coal Company, and then the Eureka Mining and Transportation Company, and then Debardeleben Coal and Iron Company, or Debardeleben Coal and Iron Company, and then TCI, Tennessee Coal Iron and Railroad Company. But way, way down there, way down in that ravine, that's where the rail line would be. There's still remains of the rail bed, culverts. There's some stone foundations, brick foundations down there near the rail bed for the mining operations that took place here. They had a series of drift mines going down into the ravine, and the ore seam was anywhere from 15 to 20 feet in thickness. So these were huge ore drift mines. They were on either side. So there's still remains of rails down there. Like I said, all the drift mines are collapsed. So need to explore, but the overgrowth is just, it's terrible. And in the summer months, a lot of copperheads. So just, word of the wise, just don't even do it. So, but anyway, this was a lot of photographs were taken in this section, and this is where one of the rail lines would head out from this ravine, would turn to the southwest and join up at a Y, and it would go 2.5 miles down to the Oxmoor Furnace. This mine site stayed in operation all the way up into the late 1890s before they abandoned it. Extracted as much ore as they could. They actually had a small slope mine that they had started developing. But once again, like the Spaulding mine, it hit that joint plane, that fault where the ore seam drops about 100, 150 feet, geological fault. So they couldn't go any further. So by that time, TCI had started moving all their operations from the south side to the north side, larger facilities, larger cable hoist, so they could keep the slope mining going deeper. So, but this is this mine site, this ravine has a lot of history to it when it comes to ore mining for the Birmingham district. So, but anyway, like I said, it just terraces down, goes off, and then it just drops. It drops about a good 200 feet. Pretty treacherous. So anyway, we'll get back on the trail and proceed along the trail to the southwest. And that's looking down into the ravine where the Eureka #1 mine site was. One of the things that has become noticeable coming up here to the park, especially in the early morning hours, it used to be that you would see in this section of the park, you would see there's at least two, there used to be at least 2-3 herds of deer. We're talking about 15, 20, 30 deer to a group, bucks, does, fawns, beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. You'd see them in the park. And especially if you came over in this section, you would always see 4, 5, 6. Now, heading down towards where the Reading Hoist House is, sometimes in that big open area, you'd see 15 or 20 crossing the road or doing early morning grazing with all that open area. And the last couple of years, have not seen not one deer up here in this park. I've seen some 10-point bucks, 8-point bucks up here. Beautiful, beautiful animals. And I just have to wonder if people are coming up into this park at night and harvesting these deer, either by rifle or either by bow hunting up here. Just not sure. Maybe other people have seen the deer, but I have not seen one in probably over 2 years coming up to this park. And the early morning and late afternoon hours, early morning, just at sunrise, I always would see them. But if that's true, I hope it's not, it is very disconcerting that if anyone is coming up in here to a park harvesting deer at night. But I don't leave anything out in today's society of what people are capable of doing, nefarious activities, but I hope that's not the case. All right, we're going to keep proceeding along the trail on top of the mountain southwest. We move quite a ways further down the trail to the southwest, and coming into the number 14 mine site, and just veer off a little bit here. And right there you can see that's about to get 75 feet, 100 feet. Further down you go, but it gets 60 to 75 feet right there of how much they cut out on top of the mountain to go out to that ore seam. So 14 mile will be way further down in that ravine right there. But that's just another example of the open cut mining they were doing. So, all right, get back on the trail and we'll head where the top of where the 14 mile was. Okay, that's looking southwest to the Ishkooda number 13. And this site right here is the Ishkooda number 14 mine site. In fact, somebody has really cleared some things out because they got a trail going down there now. Used to be, you didn't even have a trail down here. Pretty rough going. The mine portal is straight down ahead. And the 12-ton skip cars, when they came out of that mine, They would just rocket straight up through this haulage way, rails, continue straight on up to where you had a huge tipple that's situated on the north side of the mountain, right above what used to be the Birmingham Railroad, and then this became part of the TCI High Line. So it's kind of hard to believe all that was open, and that's where the rail line went up to the tipple. So back in the late 40s, I think into the 50s, there's remains. The miners, TCI built a road coming up from the north side of the mountain. In fact, this trail is part of that road, and they actually built a bridge going across the haulage way cut. Right there, there's the foundation for the bridge. You would come across right there, and the miners would just drive their cars up because the bathhouse was right over here. The foundation remains are still there. But this is the side of Ishkooda number 14. And it was a pretty deep slope mine. So this operated all the way up into the late 1950s. Sometimes it would close due to miner strikes, downturn in the economy, the depression. So, but somebody, man, it really cleared this out. That's pretty impressive. So, but you can still see some of the remains. Like I said, foundation remains, but it is pretty neat. They built a bridge right across here. So the miners would just drive up from the north side of the mountain and drive right to the bathhouse. And they actually had a rail line. If they had to have anything worked on, like the mine cars or even the electric locomotives that they started putting in the 1950s that they couldn't repair down below in the maintenance facilities deep underground, they would bring them up here. There was a rail line leading all the way to the shop houses down by Ishkooda number 13. But that's where the continuation of the rail line went all the way up to the tipple. I think in the 1950s, they tore down the wooden tipple and put up a big steel tipple. But anyway, we'll go ahead. I was going to go down this way, but since this is all cleared out, we'll just make our way down here to the portal and just in the mine hike down here at the portal. Okay. You can actually see part of the cable hoist right there. So this rail system right here, it used to sit up top, just like it down at 13 and some of the other mine sites. They painted everything yellow for safety. But this is actually when the miners would leave the bathhouse, they would come to this area right here, and this is where they would get on the skip cars to take the ride down into the mine. Right here, when they came back up, they would get off right here. They had a check house here. Somewhere in here, this is where they got their first, they got their carbide lights, and then they used electric lights, the miners did. But the bathhouse is right up there, past that wooden fence. So, wow. Yeah, somebody's really cleared this out. You couldn't even hardly get through there. Still got some of the cross tie remains right there. And that right there is part of the steel beam supports. You can see the retaining wall. There's another steel I-beam cut support with a concrete foundation. This is where the bridge was for the miners' vehicles to cross over the haulage way cut and just park in front of the bathhouse. Yeah, quite a few cross-tie remains here. Of course, they when the mines were closed down in the early 60s, during that time, they took all the rails up out of the mines and the surface facility rails. So, but when this mine first opened, this was not here. They actually had a sheave pillar here. The steam powered cable hoist and the loading tipple was down here on the south side because this was serviced by a spur line of the Birmingham Middle Railroad. So there's a couple of neat photographs of this mine in operation before they put a concrete portal on it. It's pretty interesting. Whole area is just devoid of trees. So CCI spent a lot of money operating these mines, man. Gave employment to hundreds and hundreds of ore miners, that's for sure, and their families. So, all right, we'll just proceed on down to the mine portal. Look back up the cut right there. So this whole cut was developed by about 1906, 1907, when they moved everything to the north side. But you can still see some of the cross ties right there and right there is still in place. There's the remains of some more right here, right there. So we'll just go right down here to the portal here. Okay, so this is the Ishkooda number 14 mine portal entrance. It used to just be a bare entrance. They had some wooden bracing on the outside. It was just going straight into the ore seam. So back down this way is where you had your cable hoist, your ore crusher, your huge wooden loading tipple, and the spur line from the Birmingham Middle Railroad to come to the tipple. In this general area, in the early 1900s, they had a sheave pillar that was located, that's all gone when they, built all this. But the sheave pillar, the hoist cable would come up from the steam operated cable hoist, come up this way, wrap around the sheave pillar, and lower the mine cars straight into the mine, and vice versa. When they came out, they would go on a track, switch off to a track and go straight down to the loading tipple, the ore crusher, and the loading tipple. But anyway, they, modified all the mines in the late 30s, early 40s, one after the other, concrete line, the mine portals. You can see it opened in 1895, and it was modified in 1941. And that's about when they sealed everything up, that's about a good 20-inch concrete rebar steel rail sections to plug the mine. So I believe this was done probably in 71, 72. The mines have been abandoned by 61, 62. So when they shuttled this off, this was really to limit any liability of people going into the mines. So, but a nice piece of history. They had a man and materials way around the corner over here. Never have figured out what that was right there. But went to something. They actually had one more manway really behind over there. Of course, you can tell everything has been long since sealed up, collapsed. But anyway, we'll walk down there and just take a look at some of the foundation remains for the cable hoist, the steam, where the steam engines were, and on the rail line before we close it up. And let's look back up. Okay, this is got your mine entrance right there. This is actually where the man and materials way entrance was. This is also where they took the when they were taking mules and horses down into the mine. Of course, it was a heck of a lot bigger than this. So, but park officials, I guess they just got creative, put this up here. But anyway, all that was sealed by dynamite when they when they finished closing up these mines in the early 70s. But somebody just put that up there from the park, kind of making it look like it's out west or something. But, you know, it's okay. But anyway, we'll head on down this way. Okay, so that's looking back up the trail to where the mine entrance was, just around the corner to your right. And when the mine cars came out, hoisted up out of the mine, they came down, and this is where your long wooden tipple would start, heading down in this direction, because down below is where the rail bed was, the spur line. What you got there is remains of tailing piles. Anything that was an iron ore, you had shale, limestone, sandstone. They would just, you see these all along in the park, giant pyramids of loose rock. And that's where they dumped it. But anyway, the wooden tipple would come out over this way. This flat area down here is the termination end. Right here in this ravine, this is where the end of the spur line of the Birmingham Railroad was. And just down there, a foundation remains. And this is the mine cars that would be shipped down along this wooden tipple, and they would be deposited. Now, I can't remember if they had an ore crusher here or not. They may have not have. They may have just had the loose ore. Probably, most likely, that's what they had. But anyway, a lot of the foundation remains are still down there. So we are actually standing on the rail bed of the Birmingham Railroad spur line to number 14. Looking back that way up in the draw would be the mine portal. And these are the foundation remains to the number 14 mine right here. Wow, this has really grown up. So right here, I believe that's where your ore crusher was. You got your cable hoist house right here, somewhere right here. I'm not sure what that foundation was. But anyway, very well preserved. And like I said, all up here is you had a giant tipple, a wooden loading platform going all the way back up that draw. So, but there's a nice photo. I think it was taken, 1901, 1902. They had a tour group come out here. And back in the late 1890s and early 1900s, Birmingham hosted a lot of conventions, man. A lot of conventions. They would always bring, people would be fascinated with the mines, and they would always have special trains. Either the Louisville and Nashville railroads, Birmingham Railroad, they would have Pullman cars, luxurious Pullman cars. And they would take them on excursions, day excursions to the mines, the blast furnaces, the coal mines, the quarries, because Birmingham was just booming. So it was a big fascination for a lot of people, plus for investors. So showcase the industrial growth of the Birmingham district. But these are the remains of the Ishkooda number 14 mine. Like I said, by 1905, 1906, all this was abandoned, and they moved everything to the north side. So, but anyway, that'll do it. We'll go ahead and end it up here, but nice little morning hike. And like I said, the rail bed runs back in this direction here, curves off to the southwest, and then joins up the walking trail with the South Branch walking trail. That goes to the Ishkooda number 15 mine, that trail, which is on the rail bed. So anyway, good early morning hike. Just see some of the historical sites. We'll go ahead and end it there.